8 Reason why the Shield's WWE reunion is doomed to fail. Enjoy it while you can, because the wheels are about to fall off. The Shield's long-awaited reunion is finally upon us. Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and Dean Ambrose came back together on this week's Raw, with The Miz, Sheamus, Cesaro, and Braun Strowman all tasting their wrath. WWE's most celebrated modern stable have reconciled through mutual enemies, and their next stop comes on October 16, when Reigns faces Strowman inside a steel cage. This'll be the Shield's last major hurdle ahead of TLC 2017, where they'll face their foes in a 4-on-3 tables, ladders, and chairs match. It's an enticingly violent prospect, and the trio's track record suggests it'll live up to expectations. But is the grand reunion all it's cracked up to be? Sure, the early stages have been strong, but this is WWE. We're talking about a company whose creative team have mastered the art of taking white-hot angles and rendering them colder than a polar bear's pudding. This is only the tip of it, though. Scratch the storyline surface, and you'll find a multitude of reasons to temper your expectations, despite the solid start. The Shield's reunion shouldn't be short of fun moments. Cherish them before it all goes up in flames. 8. They have ridiculously high standards to live up to. The Shield's trio's war with Ryback, Kane, and Daniel Bryan at TLC 2012 is one of the greatest debut matches in WWE history. Wrestling together for the first time, Rollins, Ambrose, and Reigns displayed staggering levels of cohesion, drawing 8 performances from one of the best wrestlers in the company, Bryan, and his 2 lumbering partners, and producing one of WWE's most exciting all-action bump fests in years. They set a dangerously high bar from day one, but the Shield continued delivering excellent matches. The series with the Wyatt family deserves to become legendary, particularly the Elimination Chamber 2014 bout. Their 2014 feud with Evolution remains underrated. They highlighted that year's Royal Rumble, and their electric chemistry ensured they stood out on every single show. Can the trio live up to these standards in 2017? Perhaps, but it won't be easy. Advertisement: Sheamus, Cesaro, Strowman, and Miz are talented opponents, but the bout will inevitably be compared to the Shield's classic trios matches. The whole thing will go down as a disappointment if they can't hit the same level, and with WWE's general in-ring standards slipping throughout 2017, it's easy to see that happening. 7. It's too soon. 3 years, 4 months, 10 days. That's how long it has been since Seth Rollins struck his Shield brothers down and twisted the knife by running straight to Triple H in the Authority's cold, corporate embrace. It's a long time in wrestling terms, but the problem is that Rollins, Ambrose, and Reigns have barely been able to stay apart since then. Dean and Seth feuded in the immediate aftermath, and the Architect has also crossed paths with Roman countless times. Reigns and Ambrose have teamed on multiple occasions and wrestled each other at Survivor Series 2015. All 3 came together for Battleground 2016's Triple Threat main event. They popped the crowd with a huge Shield powerbomb at last year's Survivor Series. Sure, there have been a few periods where the trio haven't appeared together at all, but they're never far from touching distance. This has greatly diminished the reunion's appeal. Episodic weekly television makes it difficult, but if WWE had shown restraint and actually kept the Shield apart for any length of time, this story would feel a lot fresher. It's still exciting, but nowhere near as thrilling as it should be. WWE have never given us enough distance to make our hearts grow fonder. 6. Everybody hates Roman. WWE have done everything in their power to get Roman Reigns over as the guy. From having him end The Undertaker's career to heroically battling the odds at the 2015 Royal Rumble and every big match he's had since then, really, they've all but exhausted their list of options, and the Shield's reunion might be the final roll of the dice. Reigns has become wrestling's most divisive figure since the trio split, but people love the Shield, and nostalgia is a powerful tool. They likely hope that realigning with Ambrose and Rollins will finally turn the fans to his side and present him as a true babyface ahead of his inevitable WrestleMania 34 coronation. Their logic is deeply flawed. The Shield will be cheered, and rightly so, but a 2 to 3 month run with his former brothers won't undo several years of obnoxious booking. Unless WWE used the story to trigger a fundamental revamp of Reigns' character, there's no reason to believe he'll emerge from this a bigger babyface, and his reactions will revert to type as soon as it's over. Until then, we can look forward to fans rooting for the Shield in spite of Roman, not because of them. They'll get big pops, but they won't blow the roof of the building, and this is largely down to you-know-who. 5. The thrown-together opposition. The Shield will face Braun Strowman, Sheamus, Cesaro, and The Miz at TLC 2017. It's an incredible array of performers. Cesaro is one of the best in-ring talents of his generation, Miz is an entertainer par excellence, Sheamus is perennially underrated, and Braun is the hottest thing in the company. An all-star group for sure, but an occasion as big as the Shield's reunion demands more than that, and their coming together has been haphazard. Miz and The Bar forged their alliance over only a couple of weeks, while the monster among men was only thrown into the mix on Monday's Raw. Strowman's dislike for Roman Reigns is his only reason for joining forces with the trio. It's flimsy at best, utterly unconvincing at worst, and not befitting of what should be one of the year's biggest matches. They'll likely have a great fight, but the bout would mean so much more had the opposing group been carefully assembled over a period of months, not thrown together at the last minute. Nothing raises the stakes and brings a match to the next level like long-term storytelling. Unfortunately, this is a dying art in modern-day WWE. 4. It's starting on AD-level PPV. It shouldn't come as a huge surprise that WWE are pulling the trigger on the Shield's reunion at one of the year's least hyped pay-per-views. The company have, after all, burned what should have been awe-inspiring first-time matches like Shinsuke Nakamura vs John Cena and Randy Orton vs AJ Styles on free television this year. No Mercy saw them give away two bouts with genuine WrestleMania main event potential, and while Cena vs Reigns and Strowman vs Lesnar had their plus points, both felt less important for featuring on a B show. TLC is much the same as No Mercy. It has a flashy gimmick attached, but it's nowhere near as important as a Survivor Series or Royal Rumble, and it's where the Shield will wage their comeback's first war. The counter-argument is that WWE need to draw eyes to these lesser shows, so of course they're going to use them to host big matches. This is fine in moderation, but it feels like WWE are burning what should be historic bouts on every single pay-per-view these days, which not only devalues the moments themselves, but also the performers involved in them. 3. Burying secondary titles. WWE's treatment of their championships is another well-worn complaint, but one with merit. The company generally do an atrocious job of making their belts feel like genuine prizes. Each one has had its prestige dented at some point over the past few years, and while several still have value, it feels like WWE can only ever maintain the importance of 2 or 3 at a time. The Raw Tag Team and Intercontinental Champions will all be involved in the Shield's reunion match. There's a slim chance WWE could put the belts on the line, but that seems extremely unlikely, and it looks very much like the pay-per-view will pass without an Icar Tag Championship bout. It's great that the champions are involved in such a high-profile match, but this does nothing for the belts themselves. Giving them a spot on each pay-per-view is imperative to maintaining their importance, and while both championships have been booked reasonably well in 2017, this move essentially tells fans that neither is worthy of a spot. It begs the question of why the belts even exist if they're going to be tossed aside whenever a bigger storyline comes along. 2. It's a cynical ratings grab. This is a tricky time of year for WWE. It's too early to start building WrestleMania hype, which prevents them from using the year's biggest event as a marketing tool, and the NFL is back in full flow, putting Raw in direct competition with Monday Night Football every week. The company's ratings struggles are bad enough without these extra challenges, and they must work harder than usual to maintain their audience throughout autumn. Knowing this, it's easy to understand why WWE decided to spring the Shield's reunion in October. It's not because they wanted to tell a cool story, it's because they're trying to salvage ratings, which speaks volumes. The angle has began relatively strongly, but WWE's creative team are notoriously bad at following up on hot starts, and if their focus is on ratings, not artistry, what chance does the storyline have of succeeding? This is all speculative, of course, but the warning signs are there. Anyone who's been watching WWE for any length of time knows that long-term storytelling isn't one of their strengths, but this is cynical, even by their standards. Still, what else should we expect from a company that believes philanthropy is a marketing tool? 1. We already know how it ends. The biggest issue with the Shield's reunion is that it's entirely predictable. They may stay together for a couple of months, but Rollins, Ambrose, and Reigns shall go their separate ways eventually, and one will likely turn heel. It won't be Roman, who we know is going to face Brock Lesnar for the Universal title at WrestleMania 34. This leaves Dean and Seth, who can well face each other in New Orleans. Given the architect pulled the trigger last time around, it's reasonable to assume that Ambrose will turn on his brothers, sending him on his first major singles run as a bad guy. The outcome isn't a problem in and of itself. Reigns vs Lesnar and Ambrose vs Rollins should be fantastic matches, and it'd be great to see Dean working heel after spending so much time as a goofball babyface. This is all fine, but the fact that it's so blatantly obvious isn't. There's little fun in following a storyline when you already know how it ends, and while the Shield's resurrection will be peppered with enjoyable moments, it's only going to be half as satisfying as it should be. Sadly, WWE's propensity to telegraph every single angle will